Welcome to the Altruistic Libertarian, advocate for a genuinely free society. I'm Anthony Wheeler, and today we continue our sequence on the proper role of government. To ensure a genuinely free society, the following changes might be made to our political system. Number 1. The Bill of Rights should be extended to protect individuals from all forms of needless government intervention. This, and effective oversight by the courts to ensure compliance, see below, are essential. This point cannot be emphasized enough. Without an extended Bill of Rights that ensures the maintenance of a genuinely free society, government encroachment will continue to ultimately equal, if not surpass, the level of intervention we experience today. 2. While democratic processes would continue as before, that is, popular elections for representatives and senators, for instance, state and federal Supreme Courts would ensure that legislation doesn't trespass the individual rights established in a revised and extended Bill of Rights. 3. The process to select government executives, including presidents and governors, should include screening to determine basic qualifications, including leadership and experience effectively leading large organizations, a similar process that major corporations use when selecting top executives. 4. For presidents and all government employees with access to classified material, demonstrated ability to obtain a top-secret security clearance at a minimum. 5. Foreign intervention should be limited to defend against direct threats against the nation and its citizens. Violent military force should only be used as a last resort. Under these general guidelines, the legal and political structure would provide every citizen with expanded opportunities and more generous choices, the goal to make all laws good. And I quote, "The discussion of the first question shows nothing so clearly as that laws, when good, should be supreme." Unquote. One last point on democracy. Even in its flawed state today, it serves as a bloodless mechanism for regime change, a crucial distinction between a democratic society and one ruled without constraint. See Russia and North Korea, for instance. This was demonstrated in the 2020 presidential election. Despite Trump's every effort to subvert the electoral process, including fomenting an assault on the Capitol on January 6, the democratic institution held, and Biden was sworn in without the bloody fight it would have taken absent our democratic tradition. Although it must be admitted that this was the very same democratic process that elected Trump in the first place and could conceivably re-elect him in the near future. Equality and the individual. Words can be used in different ways and change meanings within changing context. For instance, Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence words that many of us memorized in school, and I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Unquote. But all men are not created equal. In fact, some men are actually women. When this was written, anyone born black certainly wasn't equal in any sense whatsoever. Even today, every birth represents a new life, a unique individual with various characteristics and multiple potential fates. An endless mix of genes, culture, time, and place. This is empirical fact and won't change under any political system absent universal cloning. Beyond the obvious differences between one person and everyone else, people choose different paths, and even under similar circumstances. Some choose to marry, others remain single. Some choose to have children, others not. For reasons unknown, people do things that we can't understand, things we believe to be harmful or wasteful, sometimes incredibly brilliant. Some people seem to be born lucky, while others live a life of misery, the difference between the two people hardly discernible. Attempts to make everyone socially equal in terms of money, status, possessions, or professions will always fail, given human nature and the multitude of differences both in people and in society. Some form of social hierarchy has always existed and will continue to exist in human society. Quote, "There is all the difference in the world between treating people equally and attempting to make them equal. While the first is a condition of a free society, the second means, as de Tocqueville described it, a new form of servitude." Unquote. In a genuinely free society, people are treated equally before the law. Everyone enjoys the same freedom, a plethora of opportunities, and a chance to make something of themselves, or not. Any barriers will be social and not legal, ensuring that any impediments can be breached. And I quote, "True individualism's main principle is that no man or group of men should have the power to decide what another man's status ought to be, and it regards this as a condition of freedom so essential that it must not be sacrificed to the gratification of our sense of justice or of our envy." Unquote. Leftist thinkers who advocate government intervention in the name of social justice fear that if left alone, the wealthy will become even wealthier at the expense of the less fortunate. Even some of the wealthy feel this way, at least those who believe their status due more to circumstance than what they have earned, born into the right family, say, or blessed with unnatural gifts, or simply lucky. Those who advocate the redistribution of wealth, highly progressive tax rates, and extensive social programs do so in the belief that the wealthy are undeserving of their wealth, and that they, the wealthy, are socially obligated to contribute to those less fortunate. Again, many wealthy people feel the same way. In a genuinely free society, the wealthy may indeed get wealthier, but it won't be at anyone's expense. In most cases, those who invest well, work hard, develop exceptional skills, think of NFL quarterbacks, for instance, or succeed at the highest levels of their profession, will increase their wealth. The only way this happens, again, in most cases, is through generating even greater levels of wealth within their society, be it as a professional football player, a successful business owner, an inventor of a new technology, or a popular artist. In every case, the wealth they earn is a small fraction of the wealth they create. The same goes at every economic level within society. In a genuinely free society, everyone would enjoy opportunities that don't exist today. For most people, they would face a range of options and select those based on their personal values. Those who wish to live a wealthy lifestyle could pursue one with a reasonable chance of success. For those more interested in spiritual matters, they can serve with their local church or volunteer at the SPCA. Artists can perfect their art as they make a living doing something else, less interested in money than in maximizing their free time. Instead of attempting to institute some form of rough equality through legislative means, tax law, income redistribution, standard education, limitations on income, etc., providing for individual freedom would maximize social justice. And I quote, "In a world where values collide, rational solutions to all political questions are not available. Hence, the rule of experts and specialists is in principle impossible, and tragic clashes and agonizing choices, far from being a pathological anomaly, are an ineradicable part of the human condition. Each individual must in the end decide for himself. Therefore, the maximum freedom from interference consonant with basic social order and justice is most likely to promote human flourishing and avoid frustration and suffering." Unquote. Maximum freedom means exactly that. Quote, "Throughout the 19th century, liberal thinkers maintained that if liberty involved a limit upon the powers of any man to force me to do what I did not or might not wish to do, then, whatever the ideal in the name of which I was coerced, I was not free." Unquote. While we contend that a society that supports such freedom increases individual prosperity and, in the whole, a better quality of life, there are those who believe the lack of legal constraints will simply promote rampant selfishness, and yet others feel that such concerns are overblown. And I quote, "What a man does is always aimed at improvement of his own state of satisfaction. In this sense, and in no other, we are free to use the term selfishness and to emphasize the action is necessarily always selfish." Unquote. Too often discussions of individual liberty revolve almost exclusively around economics and the material aspects of human society. Referring to Adam Smith, an economic professor of mine once claimed with derision, quote, "I don't wish to truck and barter," unquote, as if how we make a living and what we spend encompasses the whole of human life. As an example of such materialistic social determinism, I quote, "Here in America, there is no difference between a man and his economic fate. A man is made by his assets, income, position, and prospects. The economic mass coincides completely with a man's inner character. Everyone is worth what he earns and earns what he is worth. He learns what he is through the vicissitudes of his economic existence." Unquote. Most people would disagree with Max and Ted and assert that humans desire far more and that quality of life includes many non-material, non-commercial, and non-industrial aspects. To pigeonhole anyone based solely on their salary, or where they live, or who they marry, or the mass of their possessions is clearly unreasonable, and in the majority of cases, simply wrong. Get to know anyone in any social or economic class and discover what makes them unique. No two people, even those sitting in adjacent cubicles and earning the same pay with the same responsibilities, will resemble each other in any fundamental way. In part, this is because, and I quote, "Production is not something physical, material, and external. It is a spiritual and intellectual phenomenon. Its essential requisites are not human labor and external natural forces and things, but the decision of the mind to use these factors as means for the attainment of ends." Unquote. The ends Mises refers to could be anything a human desires. For instance, any commitment to self-improvement, whether it be professional, personal, or spiritual, entails using the mind to direct one's activities in a specific manner in order to progress along a chosen path. A particular individual may choose a path that baffles the rest of us. Some people adopt lifestyles that seem irrational from the point of view of others. Within a genuinely free society, these personal choices are respected and people left free to decide for themselves. In some cases, somebody will discover a path never before considered and become a leader. In other cases, people will choose self-destructive activities. At such times, family, friends, and community will sometimes be called upon to intervene peacefully to heal and teach others to avoid similar fates. Quote, "God, I don't want to have any more enthusiasm for big programs full of social planning for big masses of people that leave individual quality out. And I think it's about time to return to the rebuilding of this American resource, individual worth. There are political reactionaries who've been saying something close to this for years. I'm not one of them, but to the extent they're talking about real individual worth and not just an excuse for giving more money to the rich, they're right. We do need a return to individual integrity, self-reliance, and old-fashioned gumption." Unquote. In the political systems of the West, various interest groups vie for influence and favors. The going assumption is that the taxes collected from productive individuals and business entities are to be divvied up among these interest groups without restraint. Everyone wants lower taxes, but they also want political favors in terms of Social Security, industrial projects in home districts, protection from foreign competitors, and farm subsidies. Legislators eyeing re-election pander to special interest groups by voting for one thing and against another. While I imagine that most government employees, elected or otherwise, would like to do the right thing, fulfill the mission of their agency, say, or vote for economically sound policies, there are too many barriers to behaving in ideal ways. For example, political favor that's more important than economic impact. Pressure to support a faction over and above policy. The lack of accurate and germane information that would distinguish the bad from the better. I quote, "Trying to be objective is an arduous, fatiguing business, which in the end only the virtuous can attain. Only those with patience, honesty, courage, and persistence can delve through the dense layers of self-deception which prevent us from seeing the situation as it really is. This is especially difficult for those who wield power, for power tends to breed fantasy, reducing the self to a state of querulous narcissism. For all its tough-minded pragmatism, it is riddled with delusion, assuming that the whole world centers subserviently upon itself. It dissolves reality into a mirror of its own desires." Unquote. Government bureaucracies are not structured to operate efficiently or effectively, and it's not anyone's fault. It's the nature of the beast. Unlike private commercial institutions, government bureaucracies do not produce the information, or the motivation, or the incentives, or the organizational structure to operate effectively. It's nearly impossible to measure success, or productivity, or to balance cost and benefit within these institutions. Bureaucrats are rewarded for other things: loyalty, the illusion of success, political instincts, social skills. These are not bad things, just that they don't necessarily correlate to organizational effectiveness. Even if actual saints led these bureaucracies, they would do only marginally better, given the inherent challenges, let alone the people that actually rise to the top of them or get elected president. Even if these government agencies were staffed with professionals with the purest motives and the greatest skill, operating effectively, that is, delivering more value than organizationally and financially expended, would remain highly unlikely given the inherent difficulty in determining cost, value, progress, or relative failure in any given moment for any particular effort, project, or major decision. Alternatively, like liberals in the past, the Altruistic Libertarian promotes, and I quote, a social system which does not depend for its functioning on our finding good men for running it, or on all men becoming better than they now are, but which makes use of men in all their given variety and complexity, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes intelligent, more often stupid. Their aim is a system under which it would be possible to grant freedom to all, instead of restricting it, as their French contemporaries wish, to the good and the wise. Unquote. It's unreasonable to ask of humans more than they can deliver. The current political system does just that by putting elected officials and agency executives in impossible positions. The power they wield and their collective influence has derailed beneficial policies for decades and instead instituted one bad law after another, creating new agencies, new taxes, more regulations, and growing deficits. Well, that concludes our show for today. Next time we continue our examination of the proper role of government. Until then, peace.